All right, guys, welcome back. This is episode 28 of the Let's Talk Ball pod. I am Tochi, and I am back here with Spain. Today, we are going to talk to you about our reactions to the Champions League final, and then we want to wrap up the Premier League season by taking a look at who qualified for Champions League, Europa, and Conference, and then we're going to talk about our EPL awards of the season. But before we get into all that, Spain, how are you doing?
Doing well. On Monday here after the Champions League final on Saturday. I enjoyed watching that with some friends and had a good weekend. But yeah, doing well. How are you?
I am good. It's been fun watching all the soccer kind of come to an end with the season. And then also looking ahead to next season. As a United fan, this is a season to forget, and I'm excited about some of the new acquisitions and stuff that's going on. So it's been fun kind of following transfer rumors and getting to that part of the season. But yeah, doing well in general.
Nice. Yeah, it's honestly a really fun time once the season's over and you kind of think towards next season, especially when you have a bad season for your team that you're supporting. So I'm sure you're excited for what's to come, for changes, and just to follow along because it sounds like there's going to be a lot of movement this summer. Likewise for Arsenal, it sounds like we will be making some big signings. So it's been fun to see us already kind of have Zubimendi deal. Sounds like it's going to happen. And then already have some more rumors for other things. So agreed on that point.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to look into those in the future. But for now, let's talk about what just happened. I want to start with the Champions League final. That was the huge game that happened this weekend. We are recording on Monday after the game, so a couple days later. The game itself wasn't quite a spectacle in the way you might expect for a Champions League final. It ended 5-0 in favor of PSG, just utter domination on their part. Inter looked like they were pretty shell-shocked from the very beginning. And I think there's a lot of things that we could talk about in this game, but I think I want to start with, I think this might be the most dominant Champions League performance in a final, at least that I've seen in a very long time. And all credit to Luis Enrique for how he was able to do that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it was the most dominant performance in terms of goals at the end. The 5-goal difference. Margin of difference for PSG to win by was like the single most ever. So within the past decade, to your point, definitely is the most dominant that I can think of. Real Madrid did have that run of 3 in a row back in, I think it started in like 2015, 2016 season to the following 2. But in just terms of a single game, Champions League final, PSG utterly dominated. So I think you'd have to categorize it as the most dominant within the past decade.
Yeah. I think...
Inter just... Okay. Go ahead. You got it. All right. Inter was just, like I said, really bad. They didn't create anything all game. They never got control of the ball, couldn't deal with PSG's pressing, and just created so little, which is really contradictory to what we saw in the semifinal against Barcelona. Barcelona don't defend well and keep a really high line and let teams get in behind. And Hansi Flick even acknowledged that that's something to work on next season is their defending because it was so bad this year. But just based off of how many goals Inter were creating in the semifinal, I expected them to attack a lot more, create a lot more, and for it to be a tighter game than it was. I picked Inter to win mostly because of their experience and just because how things were going for them this season. I thought it was kind of written for them. How like they were pulling out these wins, but talent-wise, PSG were definitely better, and it really showed on the pitch. But I think a large part is due to Luis Enrique.
Yeah, I agree. Was expecting Inter to put up a much better fight at the very least, but I actually picked them as well. But I also said before the game started that I thought it was one of those games that could swing pretty heavily based on who scored the first goal. And not to say that on that day, it looked like PSG was going to win regardless of what happened, but I'd like to think Inter might have been able to like kind of grow into the game a little bit more had they been able to score first. But we'll never know. And all credit to PSG for how they the performance that they put together, because it was not at all a fluky performance. It was just utter dominance from start to finish. And I think we got to give credit to the team that Luis Enrique has built at PSG, because one thing that I find very interesting tactically is I wrote this down, that they don't play with like a kind of recognized number 6. I know you can kind of count João Neves as that, but he's kind of just as much an 8 as Vitinha is. And then Fabian Ruiz is also kind of just like a number 8. Like they all kind of play like the same position of midfield, which means that they can all rotate within that midfield very, very fluidly. It doesn't matter where they pop up. They're going to be strong in all those different areas. And then again, for the attack, Dembele is kind of playing this, I don't even know if you consider it a false 9, but he's playing in that number 9 position. But he can go out left. He can go out right. Kvaratskhelia can come in the middle. Doué can kind of play through the middle or the left or the right. And they're just so fluid as a team that it makes it so difficult for teams to play against them. And I think that's very, very interesting because I don't know if we've seen, at least I can't think of a team that has played with such, I guess, dynamism is the word that PSG plays with. And I have a very, very deep amount of respect for the manager because for a while I kind of thought he was a fraud a bit. Like I thought he was a manager that was just so strict and positionally set that he kind of restricted players and didn't really give them the ability to flourish in the way that I would like. But I was watching an interview with Vitinha, and he was talking about how last season the manager was so strict about what their roles are, what you did in these certain zones. You could rotate a little bit with this player, but like don't take it too far. But I think that was just to get the principles of how to play down. And then he said this season he kind of just like let them free and was like, all right, now you guys all have like the basics down. Now you get a little bit more freedom. Now you can be a little bit more expressive, pop up where you want, as long as everyone knows where they need to be. And I think this game was the pinnacle of that. You just watched everyone you watched the whole beautiful picture come together at the end, essentially.
Yeah, having to defend that must have been a nightmare against PSG because, like you said, their forwards are so quick and skillful, and then their midfielders are so technically sound that they move the ball so well. Dembele drops in so deep to pick up the ball that a center back's not going to follow them. Then, like, as an extra player in the midfield that can't be covered, and then they're just so quick with their passing and so dynamic with their movements. They break down and just really got through Inter's midfield so easily. I think it was that third goal where Dembele got it from Vitinha and did a little back heel roll or soul roll back to Vitinha, who made that awesome run that played in Doué. That was just a beautiful move. That kind of sums up what we're talking about in terms of Dembele coming out of position and then Vitinha having the license to go forward and make that run. And then Doué to cap off a really simple finish in the end from a great ball from Vitinha.
Exactly. And as you name some players right there, who do you think were the standout players from not only this game, but I would say PSG in general in this Champions League run?
Dembele is definitely the best. I mean, he had a crazy goal scoring record in the Champions League this season. Actually, I was thinking of Rafinha, but in terms of the goal scoring record. But Dembele was a star throughout for them. Doué was like the surprise star because he was just so young and new, but he's filthy. He was so impressive, and I think Vitinha just kind of running the show deep, getting on the ball a lot, was also really instrumental for them.
Yeah, I would say for me, the standout players from the Champions League run for PSG have to be. I think one unsung hero was João Neves. I think he is an extremely good player, and crazy to think he's only 19. And from a United perspective, I'm super disappointed. The PSG paid about 60 million for Ugarte, decided after a season that they didn't want him, sold him to us for 60 million, basically didn't take a loss on that, and then went and reinvested that straight in João Neves, who seems like he's going to be a world beater of a player. Granted, I don't think João Neves maybe translates as seamlessly into the United team, but we were looking at him and basically went Ugarte instead, so that's very disappointing. And then another standout player from the team for me is, I was going to say Doué, the young kid. Another one who you look at him play and you're so surprised how young he is. But I remember United were looking at him last summer to sign him from Rennes, but I don't know what the correct French pronunciation is for that.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. We were looking at him last season, but didn't want to cough up the funds, I think, for a relatively unproven talent, but it looks like he's worth every single penny at this point, and his price definitely just went up after scoring a brace in the Champions League final. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that front three at PSG as a slight segue, because it looked like Barcola at the beginning of the season, first half, and even into like January, February time period was looking like he was the young kid coming up and kind of putting the world on notice. And that could they sign Kvara, and that meant they had three spots for four really talented players. So I'm interested to see between Due and Barcola who they end up prioritizing, if both players are going to be happy to stay there if playing time isn't guaranteed. Because I assume Kvara and Dembele are going to be the starters, and then it's really up to between those two. Because if not, I could see Barcelo getting himself a big move. I was actually suggesting, I think that'd be a great move for Arsenal or someone in the Premier League to look at. But yeah, those are my standout players, and then we can discuss maybe what happens with Barcelo as well.
But also need to shout out the wing backs, the outside backs for PSG, Hakimi and Nuno Mendes. They were also phenomenal throughout the whole tournament. They really fly up and down the wings and get into the box like not many other players do or defenders do. You saw Hakimi on the first goal sitting inside the 6 for a tap-in. He's been coming up with big goals, scoring inside the box all Champions League season for them. They were just fantastic throughout the tournament as well. Hakimi especially. He could have been honestly one of their best players of the tournament behind Dembele, I would say.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great shout. I don't know how I forgot about the fullbacks because both of them have been incredible, like you said. Hakimi and then Nuno Mendes as well. I looked at him and he looked so talented for Portugal and even PSG the last couple of years, but it seemed like he was kind of in and out of the team. Maybe Enrique didn't trust him as much. But this season, I don't know if I can name a better left back in the world, to be honest. I think he's good on the ball, looks like an elite athlete, looks like he can defend, like he completely shut out Mo Salah in those 2 games that they played against Liverpool. And so I think he definitely deserves a lot of credit as well. Yep. Also, just this team in general I was listening to a podcast on the way home and this was blowing my mind. But if you look at how young they are, it is crazy that they were able to create such a good and dominant team in Europe with basically they have Marquinhos who's 30, and then I think Fabian Ruiz is 27, and then outside of that, or I guess Dembele is also 26-ish, but outside of that, I think the rest of their players are 24 and younger. Due is 19. Vitinha is pretty young. João Neves 19. Pacho is 22. Hakimi, 26? Nuno Mendes, 24. They have so many young players. Zaire Emery's 18 still or something crazy.
Yeah, I think might be 19 when I saw him.
19.
But still, yeah, it's really scary how talented and young this team is. It's just scary.
Exactly. It's not like a team that just sold out on people or on players that are in their prime to try and win now. This is a team that they're building for the future, and seems like they're going to be a mainstay for years to come.
They got a ton of Parisian players too coming up. Just so many young French talents, and they've got some of the best in their team. Yeah,
it was a really cool moment seeing that one academy kid come on and score and seeing how happy he was his celebration. He just didn't even know what to do with himself.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine coming on to a Champions League final and scoring at 19, however young he is.
Yeah. I think one of the last things I wanted to cover in this section is just, I assume that winning this and winning the treble with PSG means Dembele probably wins the Ballon d'Or. I don't really see anyone else competing for it with him besides Lamine Yamal, but I think it would have taken Dembele to lose this game for that to be more of a competition. So honestly, great for him. And then I also want to talk about, what do you think this says about Mbappe and his legacy? Because it does not look great that the season that he leaves PSG, they just go on to dominate. Real Madrid are disappointing in the Champions League and in the league. And then PSG go on and win the very season that he leaves. And also, I don't know if you've seen the clip online of Mbappe getting talked to in the room. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And talking about pressing like dogs and this, like that. And if you buy into this, you can win it all, this, and that. And then that's exactly what Dembele has been doing. I saw the clips of him kind of looking at Summer, ready to press, almost jumping the gun. And, he just was looking like he was hunting the ball down like a dog. So that aged very well for PSG and not very well for Mbappe.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show that no player is bigger than the team. I love to see that, and I think Mbappe believes he is like, probably believed he was bigger than the club himself, and everyone knows he's not a real workhorse or gonna put in the defensive effort. So it just goes to show, if you really do buy into the tactics and what the coach is preaching, given that he's a good one and he's got a good game plan, what can really happen for you. So I think it's really great to see so many talented young players buying into the system and working hard off the ball. It should just be a model for young players to watch. But yeah, it looks really bad for Mbappe because PSG have been trying for so long. He was kind of like the chosen one, the young French talent that they got early from Monaco to take them to the promised land. And he just never came through for one reason or another. But yeah, it doesn't look good for him given that they won the year after he left. And like I said, it's just great to see that the team isn't bigger than one player and the importance of buying in.
Yeah, 100%. That's probably easier to do with younger players as well versus more established players. Like when they had Mbappe at their peak, it was probably like Mbappe, Neymar, Messi, best three players in the world at the time, but hard to make that click, I think, versus when you have younger players, a little bit less ego involved. Let's see. Anything else to wrap up Champions League? Last thoughts there?
I guess on the Ballon d'Or talk, where do you stand on Mo Salah in the race? Because he had a great Premier League season. It was really hot at the start of the season. It kind of fell off. Liverpool didn't make it to the Champions League final. Didn't win any other trophies other than the Premier League, but he still had a great season, especially numbers wise. Where do you put him in terms of I guess like Dembele and I guess Yamal being the other option?
Yeah, he's definitely top four between Dembele, Yamal, Rafinha, and Salah. I think Rafinha. I think the first three have the advantages of trophies to their name. Each of those three won at least two trophies, and three in the case of Dembele versus Salah only won one. I feel like I kind of talked about this when we were talking about Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo. I think it was a little bit, or I don't know if we talked about this or I just kind of talked about it personally with friends, but I feel like how you show up in some of the biggest stages also matters. And Mo Salah had his moments, but I think when it came to like Champions League and some of these bigger games, I feel like he didn't quite step up versus Rafinha and Lamine Yamal and Dembele all had huge goals at key parts of their season at the end. And I think that gives them the edge for me on top of already having more trophies. So that's why I didn't really consider him, but I don't think his season should be talked about in any way of a slight. I think he had an incredible season. Gave me nightmares in FPL and just watching him in general. So I think he deserves to be up there in the conversation. Just can't really give him the edge over any of those other players for me.
Yeah, he had so many goals and assists and was so prolific throughout the Premier League season. Probably had his best ever Premier League season, at least numbers wise. But it might have just been more of a tactical thing, but he didn't feel that influential because he was kind of left to stay high for Liverpool and just getting behind. And he would pop up with an assist late, important, like earlier in the season, important assist, important goal late. But I agree, I don't feel like he had any like huge standout moments in a really pivotal game to really show that he was the best in the world. And just kind of how it works in terms of like narratives toward the end of the season, he just kind of fell off and didn't break any records, or didn't break the assist record which he was going for. I think he had the most goals and assists over a 38 game season, like combined.
Yeah,
but still
I think he did.
Didn't break the assist record. And just like it kind of was a dud at the end of the season for Liverpool. Not that they didn't have a great season. But yeah, it's just kind of like a narrative thing. And the fact that I feel like Salah wasn't as influential despite his crazy number of goals and assists.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think narrative is a perfect word to use. I think, unfortunately, football is a pretty narrative-based game, and I don't think he did enough to add to that narrative, especially towards the tail end of the season when some of the biggest games are happening.
And there's no summer tournaments to help with that as well.
Yep, exactly. But I do think that is a good segue to move on to the Premier League, though, as we talk about Liverpool and Mo Salah's season. We want to talk first about, before we get into the awards, let's just talk about how the table ended up looking, who qualified for Europe, and what's going on there. So from the Champions League spots, from top to bottom, we have Liverpool obviously winning the league by 10 points. Next behind them, we have Arsenal, then City, then Chelsea finished fourth, Newcastle fifth. Aston Villa finishes sixth in the first Europa League spot, and then Nottingham Forest finished seventh, which qualified them for Conference League. And then two notable additions are going to be Crystal Palace. They won the FA Cup, so they get an automatic nod to the Europa League. And then Tottenham Hotspur, all the way down in 17th place, only 7 points outside the relegation zone. They beat my beloved Manchester United in the Europa League final to get Champions League qualification, which is crazy. What did you think about how this end of the season shaped up? Anything that surprised you? Anything that you think is worth talking about here?
Newcastle losing on the final day, or did they lose or draw and still making it in, was very fortunate for Newcastle. They had a very easy home game against Everton. Everton had nothing to play for. Already had the last home game at Goodison Park. No Tarkowski, no Branthwaite, and Liverpool just showed up and looked scared. But thankfully, United pulled out a big win for Newcastle against Villa, and Nottingham Forest, they lost to Chelsea. Chelsea performed well on the final day, which I predicted the other way around. I thought Forest would have beaten Chelsea in the last day, but that was more so just like a feel and a hope thing, because Chelsea did have a lot more momentum and were looking a lot stronger than Forest were towards the end. But I think Newcastle squeaking in was probably the biggest talking point from the final day. Chelsea won it, and then Chelsea with a really good win against Forest.
Yeah, vibes definitely ended high for Chelsea to get that win, and then also going on to win the Conference League. And then, like you said, that Newcastle loss, they ended up losing to Everton 1-0, and that's just terrible. And they got so lucky that we somehow managed to beat Villa. I gotta say, United put in probably their best performance of the season for some reason against Aston Villa. I don't know why. I mean, probably just because there was zero pressure. Is probably what it was. But we just decided that we actually want to show up and know how to play football. But that being said, I feel like we can't skirt past this without, I, at least from my perspective, can't skirt past this without bringing up Aston Villa kind of not got robbed, but it was close. What I'm talking about here is in the Manchester United versus Villa game, there was a point where United undoubtedly had dominated the first however many minutes that led up to the red card from Emi Martinez, and then even into the rest of the game. But that being said, it was still 0-0, Aston Villa down to 10 men, and Bayern, our backup keeper, is trying to secure the ball, but it's debatable whether he had control of it or not. And Morgan Rogers looks like he pokes the ball out, the ball squirts out, and then he's able to score. And Aston Villa should have gone up 1-0. But what happened was, as Morgan Rogers pokes the ball out, the referee blows the whistle for a foul on the keeper. And then because the referee blew the whistle and the play was dead before the ball went in the net, it's not even something that VAR can go back and review and reverse the call. So if they looked at it, they might have given the goal to Aston Villa, and at that point they're up 1-0, even though they're down to 10 men, and they can secure a draw, and a draw gets them. They can secure a win or a draw, and a draw would have got them Champions League football. So because of that moment, Aston Villa can feel pretty hard done, because the way that game was going, I could have seen it ending up 1-1. We did dominate pretty much from start to finish, so I don't think they would have kept us scoreless and won the game. But I think they could have at least grinded out a draw. So I do feel really bad for them there. That being said, my other caveat is I did watch the very frame-by-frame analysis, and it did look like Morgan Rogers did end up stepping on Bayern's hand just barely. But to each their own, I still think that was a huge moment, and I understand why Aston Villa fans would be really disappointed. That's a difference between probably extra 40 mil to their season or 100 mil to go into this summer, and no Champions League football. So I got to feel for them there.
Yeah, I personally don't feel for them. It's Manchester United. They know what they have to do. Emi Martinez does a bonehead move coming out, making a terrible decision like he's very prone to do. And takes out Hoyland super far out away from the goal, gets a red card. Did it to himself there. And I kind of love seeing that, like for potentially Martinez's last involvement for Aston Villa ever. Kind of hilarious, given all like how bantery he is and how much he thinks he's the greatest and the best, and for him to potentially throw away Champions League for Aston Villa. One, that was hilarious, and then two, I just thought it was everyone made a bigger deal about the Morgan Rogers thing, given the scenario, but it could, like, who knows, like. Bayern just basically has the ball in his hand. If I'm a referee, like in a normal game, I'm gonna call that every single time because it's like you said, you can go frame by frame and maybe wasn't technically in his hands, but is basically like in his possession more or less. So I'm gonna make that call if I'm a referee. Yes, I think the whole like bigger controversy came in because he blew his whistle early. Right before the ball went in the net, people were able to complain about it and able to complain more because it wasn't reviewable. So I just thought like a bigger deal was made about that as a whole, and Villa did it to themselves with Emi Martinez's bonehead mistake, getting that red card. And is United in 16th place. I've got no sympathy for Villa.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I was trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate there, just to like not seem too biased, but I agree. At the same time, they did themselves zero favors. I know I'm biased because I'm a United fan, but if you watch that game, United were, again, like I said, the better team from start to finish. So it's not even like I would feel a lot worse for Villa if they had put in a good performance and it seemed like they just couldn't barely get over the line, but they looked pretty lost the whole game. So got to show up on the last day, which they did not.
For sure. And they were so good leading up to that game too, towards the end of the season in the Premier League. So, but they came up short, and that's how it goes.
That's how the cookie crumbles. I see in here you have who had the best season after Liverpool. Do you want to take that?
I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the like how, I guess real quick, like how do you think Tottenham's going to do? I'm really excited for Crystal Palace to be in the Europa League. I think that's like a really fun tournament for them. I think I was listening to FPL pod, and Walsh, one of the guys on there, was saying how he's excited for it. And Crystal Palace comfortably finish mid-table every year. So I could see them just kind of putting a lot of chips into the Europa League, especially with Champions League teams not dropping down. It's a much more winnable tournament now for any team that's in the competition. So I'd love to see Crystal Palace and try and keep their best players, even though I want Arsenal to sign Eze. If he doesn't come to us, hope he stays at Crystal Palace. And it'll be fun to see what Crystal Palace does in the offseason with this extra money and see if they really try and go for Europa League. Because I think that is the tournament they could win.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to touch real quickly on Palace. I agree. I think it's a really good opportunity for them. I think they've shown they're a team that's been knocking on that kind of, that mid-table barrier, like you said, for a long time. So maybe this will be an opportunity for them to sign a couple extra players. And I think Glasner's a good manager and has them playing pretty well. He got them their first trophy. I think it's first major trophy ever.
Yep.
Which is crazy. So my only disappointment is, again, from United perspective, I would have loved to have gotten Adam Wharton, and I think they're going to want to hold on to him even more now that they're in the Europa League. So his price went up a little bit from already being pretty high. And then I am interested to see what they'd be willing to let go of Mateta for, from United perspective, as they head into Europa League. Maybe they try and get Eddie Nketiah more involved and capitalize on Mateta, who's coming up on the last year or two of his contract. I know it's not really about Crystal Palace in the Europa, but I am just kind of not concerned, but excited to see what happens from a squad building perspective from their side.
I think they have to keep Mateta this season because you need a proven goal scorer, and he can be that. He might have had a little bit of a down year just because last year he was so hot towards the end of the last year. I don't think he had a bad season, but he could have scored more this season. And I think you have to hold on to him going into Europa League. And I think that good point about Nketiah, he did not get many minutes at all this season. He's still good to pop up with a brace like he did on the last day. But you want him to be more consistent. So maybe getting more minutes in Europa League will help him with that. But yeah, just
True.
excited to see what Crystal Palace do in terms of bringing in players and who they can hold on to.
Yeah. What were we gonna say
It's,
about Tottenham?
Also, it's especially impressive finish of the season for Palace, given how bad they were to start the season. Like they were terrible. They went like
100%.
7 games without a win or something. They
Yeah.
were so bad to start the season. But yeah, moving on to Tottenham, I just wanted to hear how you think they're going to do this year in the league and Champions League, and whether you think Ange is going to stay or not.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So we were talking about this with Bailey a little bit in the group message, and so I'll start with the Ange thing first because I think that'll then lead into how I think they do. If I'm Tottenham, I think I let Ange go at this point. Just as someone that just went through this whole thing with Eric Ten Hag. Eric Ten Hag won the FA Cup. He underperformed with a bunch of injuries in the season prior. He had a lot of excuses as to why the team wasn't that good, but it still felt like maybe you should be doing just a little bit better than you were doing. But you won a trophy and it kind of patched over things. But then we went on to fire him and had to hire Amarim, and that made us put in a lot weaker position because we didn't have a summer to bring in players that fit the new manager system, and they didn't have time to learn the new tactics. And Tottenham are going to be in the Champions League. This is a really good opportunity for them to build on this momentum. And so if you're not sure that Ange is the guy for you moving forward, I think you maybe move on and get someone like, looks like they're interested. Top two targets are Marco Silva from Fulham or Thomas Frank. Marco Silva doesn't fill me with too much excitement. I think he's a good manager, but like kind of feels like a sideways move. But I do think Thomas Frank is very underrated as far as Premier League managers go and could help you be a pretty competitive side. He might not be a league winning manager, but I think he is probably more likely to have you end up in the top 4 to 5 teams than Ange is at this point, just based off
Mm-hmm.
what I've seen. So in my opinion, I think they should let Ange go. And then if they do that, I'm still not convinced on how they do in the Champions League or the Premier League next season. I think it really depends on who they recruit, and I have seen absolutely zero rumors about who they're going after this summer, besides like loose links to Mbumo, and that's really it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard for me to say at this point.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing them in their current state, minus a few additions, being that good next year. I think they're going to struggle having to play in the Premier League and in Champions League, fight on two fronts against some really good teams in the Champions League. So I don't see it being like a good thing for their league prospects. It will help in terms of like squad building, more money, hopefully be able to attract better talent, but I see them struggling to finish in the Champions League spot next year based off their current squad. And I didn't think about Thomas Frank. I think that would be a great appointment, honestly, because one, he's like proven, like you said, he seems like a pretty disciplined manager that commands a lot of respect, knows how to do it in the Premier League, but he also knows how to play like exciting football. So Marco Silva would be a pretty boring signing. I don't like that one at all, but I do like the Thomas Frank one for Tottenham. It feels like probably a good level, good step up for Thomas Frank, and like you said, is exciting and gets a lot more out of his players than what he like just what the talent shows. So
Yeah,
he's someone that I think could actually raise the level of Tottenham.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly where I'm at. I think it's either Thomas Frank or I don't know what other managers they might be looking at that haven't been reported. But I could understand whether they go either direction. I feel like a lot of people would be really disappointed if Ange left. I think he's won a lot of people's hearts over with winning the trophy, and then I think he was already a pretty likable guy to begin with. So I would understand the decision. I just feel like this is a very pivotal moment for Tottenham, so they're going to have to make the right move, and I'm glad I'm not in charge of making that
Mm-hmm.
call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly think they should get rid of Ange and move on. I think he makes some compelling points, and the league is like pretty up in the like. There's a lot to compete for, so to establish themselves would be getting on the track of establishing themselves like a top four consistently finishing team would be huge, because
Hmm.
Chelsea's moving up that way. City have had an off season this past season, but will likely be up there again. But after like that, like Chelsea, you'd want to get up there and kind of establish yourself before United gets really good again. Before Newcastle really kind of are able to make more signings with the financial fair play stuff, and um, before Villa can either cement themselves up there as well.
Yeah, I think all great points there.
I want to move on to the awards.
Yep. Let's
Ooh,
talk
actually,
about some. And
we
oh,
were
go
going to
ahead.
talk about who had the best season after Liverpool.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
I'll
th-
start.
yeah, well, this is just something I've been hearing a lot as an Arsenal fan. Obviously,
Hmm.
tons of like memes and stuff going around about how everyone had a better season than Arsenal, and all the Arsenal fans complaining
Yeah.
about us, like all the excuses Arsenal fans love to throw out there, which I know are out there. But I wanted to hear your perspective on who had the best season after Liverpool.
Yeah. I would say, hmm, from that perspective, like I think as far as compared to what you might have expected them to do at the beginning of the season, I would say I was gonna say Nottingham Forest for a long time, and then they fell off at the end of the season, so I don't want to give it to
Mm-hmm.
them. And then I think, despite the disappointments, I think Arsenal did well to be where they're at right now, as far as still we're well second in the league, made a deep Champions League run for the first time in a minute. So I feel like they deserve some credit for how they dealt with the setbacks, but they did kind of, they were a little disappointed in the middle of the season. And then I want to go to Newcastle. I think for me, I would pick Newcastle just because they won that trophy for the first time in 70 years, but also put together a strong league campaign, especially towards the end until they tried to bottle it the last couple of games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think for me, maybe Newcastle would be my vote for that.
Nice. Yeah, I think I have Arsenal finishing second. I just think with us finishing second in the league, we were consistent throughout the season. Yes, we didn't push Liverpool as much as we wanted to. Expectations were to win the league. We underperformed those expectations, but still we finished second, whereas everyone else finished below us other than Liverpool. And then I think making to the semifinals of the Champions League with a dominant win over Real Madrid, who is a mainstay and one of like the best all-time Champions League teams, really was a huge win for us that season. Just to get over that hump, to get to the semifinals, and to beat like a really big contender like Real Madrid, that was huge. And like I said, we dominated them. So for those reasons, I think we had the second best season. I know we underperformed in terms of like winning no trophies, but I still think we
Mm,
had like the second best season just in terms of like league finish and advancing the furthest out of any English team in the biggest competition, which is the Champions League. Um, but yeah, there's tons of talk out there, and after that, I think Chelsea probably had the best season coming in, having a Champions League spot and winning. Actually, no, the Conference League doesn't matter too much, so I take that back. I would say I think Palace had a really good season. Yes, they finished
yeah.
mid-table, but winning the FA Cup, which I think is honestly a quite difficult cup to win. You look at the team, all the good teams in England, as arguably harder to win that than the Europa League. So I think Crystal Palace had a really good season as well. So I think they
Yeah.
could be up there for like having the third best season, honestly.
I got you. I think that's a good shout. And then back to your Arsenal takes. I do disagree with everyone that's just immediately going with the sentiment that like, oh, Spurs won a trophy.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a better season than Arsenal, or even like the Chelsea fans that are like, oh yeah, we won a European trophy and this or that. I don't think they had a better season than Arsenal either. I think that's definitely a cop out answer, and just because everyone likes to make fun of Arsenal.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone that would honestly trade our like where our club is at for where their club is at. But for the banter, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. I'll give Arsenal most banterable award at the end of the season, and
That's
probably
fair.
close second is Manchester United. But I think us losing somehow, I think us losing to Spurs in the Europa League final was worse for Arsenal than it was for United from a banter perspective. At least from what I saw, like I feel like that's like half of the reason people wanted us to lose was people were like just want like at least in my circles was people just really liking to make fun of Arsenal.
Honestly, I, I I
Oh,
think
oh, go
United's
ahead.
gotten away with not getting enough stick for how bad their season was. Honestly, like you guys have been so
Yeah,
bad over the past few seasons, and just things just started going downhill so consistently that people just kind of gave up about talking about how bad you guys were this season. Um,
yeah.
so I think you guys
I
kind
think
of
we
got
got
away
bad.
with.
I think we got bad like early enough in the season, and then I think also from a United fan perspective, people kept making fun of us for losing in the league, but I'm like, I don't know. I just had no
Yeah.
expectations for us to win it in the league either. Like when Amram came in, I think at least from like United circle of like analysts and stuff like that, everyone was like, we're gonna lose a lot of games. So like I was like mentally, emotionally, mentally prepared for that. And so like everyone kept making fun of us for losing the league, but I was like, I expect to lose these games. The only games I really care about winning is Europa League, and we made it to the
Hmm.
final, and obviously didn't put up a good performance there, unfortunately. But all things considered, it was always about just seeing a little bit of progress on the field, getting a little bit of a glimmer of hope, and then going into next season hoping that we can kick on. And right now, that is seems to be on track. We just signed Cunha officially, and then it looks like Brian Mbumo came out today and said that his top target is Manchester United as well. And if we can continue on that path, I think we can be competitive next season. I don't. It's too early to say like where in the league table I think we'll finish. 100% going to depend on who we can sell and then who we bring in this summer. But I'm happy with the business so far, with it only being a few days into the transfer window.
Hmm. Yeah, no European games, only one competition really to focus on is going to be huge to let Amarin get
Yeah,
his tactics down and just a lot of time with the team. So I
yeah,
expect
Hey,
you all to have a good bounce back year,
yeah. But we'll see.
or
But we need to talk about
a much improved season at least.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But let's talk about this season before we get too far into next season. We have our end of the season awards, and we can start with each award and then each give our answer for it and talk about it a little bit. So, got to start with our player of the season. I feel like this one's pretty obvious for most people, but who is your Premier League player of the season?
Yeah, it's Mo Salah for the reasons we talked about earlier in the pod. Just some crazy goal scoring, assist numbers. He was really dominant early in the season. Kind of fell off towards the end of the season, but he really carried Liverpool to this title and won a lot of games kind of single handedly, especially early on and midway through the season. So Mo Salah, easy.
Yep. Same answer for me. Same reasoning for me. Don't really need to elaborate too much on that. He essentially won Liverpool almost single handedly won Liverpool this season or the
Hmm.
title this season.
Yep.
Um, and then as we talk about our players of the season, let's run through our team of the season in all positions. You can start with this one as well.
All right. So in goal, I have Matt Sells from Forest. He was the joint Golden Glove winner in a really good Forest team this year. Then in defense, I have Urian Timber at right back. I think he was super consistent. Definitely a little biased as an Arsenal fan. I watched him a lot this season, but to come back from his ACL tear and be so consistent, play so many minutes this year, I thought he was great. In center back, I got Van Dyke. The second one was hard for me to pick. I'm thinking maybe I'd go with maybe Mario or Milinkovic from Forest. I'll go with Mario just because I liked watching him more. I think he had one or two really nice goals. Those are a long shot, but Milinkovic was also great. And then I got Anthony Robinson at left back. I think he was super consistent. I believe he had at least 10 assists this year. Also a big fan of his. Honorable mention to Kirkez, who I think was also another great left back this season for Bournemouth. In midfield, I've got Gravenberch, who I think really cemented his spot for Liverpool and helped give them a lot of balance and covered a lot of ground for them. I was really surprised by him this season. Then I've got Declan Rice for being as consistent as he was. And then I'd probably go with Caicedo. I think he was really unsung this season. People start talking about him later in the season, how good he's been, how consistent he's been, but I thought he's been really great. He played a lot of right back for Chelsea, but for Chelsea to get a Champions League spot, he was instrumental for them. And then up top, I got Mo Salah. Nothing to talk about there. Alexander Isak had a great season, scored 23 goals, I believe, second in the league in goals. And then the third spot was between Chris Wood as another forward, but I went with Brian Mbeumo, who had 20 goals and had another great season. He was
Sure.
consistent throughout.
Yeah, I like that list. Mine's going to be pretty similar, but I can't really argue with any of those choices. Honestly, it's pretty hard to whittle down my list. So um, I will give mine now. It's relatively similar to yours, but in goal, I have Sells, like you said, same reasoning as you, joint Golden Glove winner. I think honorable mention to Allison, especially towards the beginning of the season. I think he helped Liverpool out a lot and was a bit of an unsung hero for them. Oh, well, not unsung. He got his praises, but I still think he was an instrumental part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then at right back, I have Munoz from Crystal Palace. I thought he was awesome all season, really affected the games. He was one of my favorite players to watch and one of my favorite players to have in FPL, which is probably where that's coming from for me. Um, Another honorable mention, shout out to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I thought he had a great year for West Ham.
Mm-hmm.
He won the West Ham Player of the Season, which was great to see after he got a little bit of flack at United. But moving on to center back, I've got Virgil van Dijk because you have to have a Liverpool defender in there. And then I have Saliba with a question mark in my notes. I thought the other center back position was really hard as well. I could have gone with the Forest defender because they were so solid all season. But I do think Arsenal's defense was still pretty solid all season as well. And Saliba was still great and fun to watch from my perspective.
If
Despite,
Gabriel didn't get injured, he for sure would have been in there. Just unfortunately got
yeah,
injured and missed a bunch of
exactly.
the end.
Exactly. That's actually who I had in mind, yeah, pretty early on in the season. But like you said, his injury kind of took him out, and I still wanted to put like an Arsenal defender in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then at left back, again, I have Robinson with a question mark. I thought he was great, but didn't wow me. But I don't know if any of the left backs really wowed me.
Mm-hmm.
Kirkez was a good shout from you as well. I think it's got to be between those two. And then if I go into my midfield three are Declan Rice. I thought he's spoiler alert, my Arsenal player of the season. And then my other midfielder is Caicedo. I thought he was really instrumental for what Chelsea did this season. I thought obviously Cole Palmer is a star, but I think Caicedo might have been their most important player as far as just most consistent and helping make things tick in midfield and helping kind of make sure that everyone else is able to do what they do best. And then I have, for my third midfielder, I had to pick my boy Bruno Fernandes. I thought he had an incredible season for United being just so bad. And I know it's probably controversial to put Bruno in here after United's poor results, but I think without him, we were truly relegation quality. And if you look at the stats, he was top of the league for chances created, but also number 1 or 2 in the league in terms of ball recoveries as well, which is crazy. He was playing not only attacking midfield for us and contributing to the goals, but also winning the ball back more than any other player in the league. So I think that flew under the radar, but he was all over the pitch, and I think he deserves his flowers there, so I had to put him in there. And then Mo Salah, of course, on my right wing. Isak down the middle. No explanation really needed there. But honorable mention to Chris Wood, who was insane for Forest this season, at least especially during like the earlier parts of the season. And then I wanted to fit in Morgan Rogers somehow, so I put him in at my left wing position. But I thought he deserved to be in there just based on the season he had. I think he played almost every single minute in the league for Villa this season. And was great in almost every single minute that he played.
Nice. I was between Caicedo and Rogers just because Rogers I thought had such a consistent season throughout. Yeah, he probably like missed some chances, but for just the number of minutes he played and how instrumental he is to Villa, he had a great season.
Nice.
And I thought
Yeah.
Bruno had a great season. I just couldn't put him in there with United's league finish, but it really wasn't his fault. I realized that, but I did think Bruno had a great season.
Yeah. Nice. Let's move into some more individual awards if you're done with the team of the season.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about him, but who is your surprise performer of the season?
Yeah, it's gonna be Morgan Rogers. He really took his starting position and like you said, played so many minutes. And just talked about him, but yeah, he was really consistent and good throughout the season. So I was surprised he was able to play so much and kind of stay at that level throughout the season. And saw some linked to Rogers, and I would love to bring him on to Arsenal squad. I think he would add a lot of depth and quality. Not as much like true like technical quality, but really good force in midfield. That would be great.
Yeah, he would definitely help you guys in transition, which I think you guys need a little bit more of.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. For me, my surprise performer or breakout player of the season has got to be Dean Howson from Bournemouth.
Nice.
I knew he was pretty highly rated as he came in, or when he came in this summer. I saw his name being thrown around over when I was looking at players coming in the Premier League this summer. But I didn't expect him to be as good as he was. I think him and Zabarnyi were the youngest center back pairing in the league, but also one of the best. And it's been a pleasure to watch him play. And obviously, Real Madrid thought that as well, and they went and picked him up immediately after the season was over. So he was a nice little one-season wonder here in the Premier League, and I hope he goes on to crush it at Real Madrid.
Nice. Good choice. It's a little bit of a bummer for Bournemouth that they didn't come away with any tangible wins this season, because they had a really solid season overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. They did. What about underperformer of the season? Who'd you got for that?
I think this one, we could rename this one to the Phil Foden Award, because I think it's pretty obvious that it has to be him this season. I really put this one in just so you could talk about Foden, get your hate off on him. But yeah, Foden easily going from player of the season last year to being invisible this year.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I actually was talking in a group message with my friends about how I actually don't even enjoy talking smack about Foden anymore at this point. It's just kind of sad just to see how bad the fall off was. Like, there's definitely something that's not right with him, so I don't want to pile on too much. But the fall off is crazy. I tried to convince people he was a fraud all last season. I got told I was crazy, and here we are a year later. It's crazy how quickly the narrative can shift in football. Mm-hmm. But I do think hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully with City playing better, they'll find ways to get him back to his best, because it is pretty sad watching him be a shadow of himself at this point. But yeah, the Phil Foden Award has to go to Phil Foden.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about goal of the season? Who do you got for that?
I'm going to go with maybe a little bit of recency bias, but Omar Marmoush's screamer. He hit that thing for like 40 yards out. Very nice finish. Just absolutely incredible goal.
Yeah. That was a nuts goal. As I was rewatching all the Premier League goals of the season, it was like I wanted to, like when I saw it, I thought that's goal of the season. But then I was like, maybe it's a little bit of recency bias. But yeah, that goal is absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. Like the way he hits it so hard and it dips, it looks like it's going over the bar and dips barely just back in and hits off the left post and in, like basically as upper 90s you can go. I mean, that's incredible.
The dip was insane. Like you could probably put a goalkeeper like on the post and tell him to save that, and he might not be able to, just because of how much it dips. It's the trajectory on that shot was insane.
Yeah, he just smacked the crap out of that ball. He hit
it with so much power too.
Yeah. For me, I just didn't want to pick the same one as you. It's probably Marmoush, but honorable mention to Julio Enciso, who scored an absolute banger for Ipswich against Everton. He just seems to pop up like once a season with an absolute worldy goal that's like top 5 in the league every season. So shout out to him. But for me, my goal of the season... Oh, go ahead.
So the movement on that shot from Enciso was crazy. It looks like it was going like kind of left and then straight and all the way over to the right. That goal is ridiculous.
Ridiculous goal. But I'm going to give a shout out to my boy John Duran. He's no longer with us in the Premier League, but I thought his goal against Everton in the beginning of the season was absolutely nuts. The way he hits the ball, I think it's left foot, and it looks like it's going a little bit towards the middle of the goal, and then I think swings back out to like the upper left corner. Absolute nuts goal, and I miss having him in the Premier League because he was absolute cinema.
Yeah, when I watched back the goals of the season, I forgot about Duran altogether. What like a little moment that was of him just coming off the bench going crazy, then just leaves on like a crazy feed. Mm-hmm. Just completely forgot about him, honestly.
Yeah, and the thing about his goal too is that was to win the game, like late in the game as well. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even like it was like a meaningless goal. That I think he came on the field and won the game with an absolute screamer.
Yeah, it was sick. I remember watching that one live.
Okay, yeah, me too. Me too. I was like all aboard the John Duran hype train at the beginning of the season. I hope he's doing well. I think he is doing well in Saudi Arabia. I need to keep up with that. I've got a video about John Duran on my TikTok, and it started getting videos again recently. So I wonder if he did something important that like people are looking him up or something like that.
Nice.
Let's see. A couple more awards. We've got Manager of the Season and Favorite Moment coming up. So let's talk Manager of the Season. Who is that for you?
Gotta give it to Nuno, Espirito Santo from Wolves. Just from taking them to being, I think, 17th last year to being in third for most of the season, but still finishing in the top 7 to secure European soccer, I believe, for the first time for the club. or first time in a very long time, was really impressive. He doesn't do the most impressive like tactics things, but it works for the team, and they had a really great season.
Yeah. Yeah, I got nothing but respect for Nuno. He seems like a top manager, but also a top personality, just a top guy. So I was really happy, and they're such a fun team to root for. They got my boy Ola Aina. He's the vibes guy, but then Alenga, very fun. Callum Hudson-Odoi, Morgan Gibbs-White, I think is so good. Even Elliot Anderson looks sick this year. They're just a super
Mm-hmm.
fun team to root for, and I loved seeing the way that Nuno was able to get everyone kind of rowing in the same direction. And like you said, they finished 17, so to go from that to where they are now is a feat in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. For me, my manager of the season, I'm between two. I regrettably want to say Arne Slot just because he won the league in his first season ever as the coach. Yes, he got handed an absolutely stacked squad already, but still to win it in your first season in the league, I think is a feat in itself. So shout out to them. Shout out to Liverpool. It's the only time you'll ever hear me say that. And then after that, I'll go with Areola. Like you said, I think Bournemouth played some of the best football this season. Super exciting football. They were one of my favorite teams to watch outside of United. And although they didn't really have anything to show for it at the end, I still think he did an absolutely wonderful job with them and is a top manager.
Nice. I'm glad you went with him because, like I mentioned before, I thought Bournemouth did have a great season. I didn't go. I was thinking about Uraiola, but ended up not going with him just because they didn't finish in any like in the top seven. Didn't come with any European soccer, no cup run, no like trophies. But yeah, do think he was great for Bournemouth, and they had a really good season. And I'm just expecting them to build on that to keep most of their players and to be challenging for those lower European spots next year.
Yeah. I also want to give an honorable mention to Glasner. As you said, Crystal Palace, I do think, had a good season. Granted, it didn't start well and they looked a little bit lost, but I don't know if it was necessarily too much on Glasner. I think he was kind of stripped of some players that he needed. Like he lost Elise and they replaced him with Sarr, who was good, but that was always going to take time for him to bed in. And then for him to be able to rally the troops and get them to have that FA Cup run where they eventually won the trophy, their first major trophy ever, I think he deserves a shout out as well.
Yeah, nice.
Nice. And lastly, let's finish up with our favorite moments of the season. What is yours?
Mine is it's kind of random, definitely FPL driven. My favorite moment was Tarkowski's 98th minute equalizer for Everton against Liverpool in Everton's last home game against Liverpool. You and I were both on David Moyes for the assistant managership, and we needed Everton to win or tie to get like the differential table bonus. And so that I was watching very heavily. It was a double game week for Everton, first time using the chip, and then for Tarkowski to score that late equalizer, and then just scenes at Goodison Park was a lot of fun. So that was just a really like, super fun, high energetic moment that I remember very clearly.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that I don't know if I can think of a more hype goal this season. Besides that, I mean, for me as a United fan, there was Maguire in the Europa League, but outside of that, like that Tarkowski goal, not many goals got me off my feet and screaming like that. I believe it was a Wednesday afternoon game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was working from home, and I remember Courtney was on a call in the living room, and I had the door open. I screamed on the top of my lungs, but I was like, if you saw what happened, you would understand because it was absolutely nuts. But yeah, super fun goal, and definitely like one of the moments of the season. I think any football fan watching that was like, that was awesome,
Mm-hmm.
objectively.
It was only to secure a
Yeah.
draw too, but I know it meant so much to the Everton fans as well. So
Yeah, last
seeing those
Merseyside
celebrations
derby.
was awesome. Mm-hmm.
It was the last ever Merseyside derby at Goodison, right? I don't know if you mentioned that
Yep.
already, but
Yep.
part of what made it so special.
Mm-hmm.
And then another favorite moment for me was not really an electric moment, but I laughed out loud at this. Was Jamie Vardy trolling the Spurs fans not once but twice. I'm pretty sure. So he scored in them earlier in the season. And I don't know if it was as he was coming off or something, but he points to his Premier League patch, basically signaling like, "I've got one, you guys got nothing." And then again, this is even funnier because Leicester had went on like one of the worst runs in the Premier League you could ever go on as far as like terrible goal scoring form and everything, and they somehow managed to beat Tottenham, I'm pretty sure, back in January, and Vardy did it again against them, and I just thought that was awesome. So I had to give that moment some shine, especially with Jamie Vardy leaving Leicester and being out of the Premier League. I think he needs to have his moment. I think it very much embodies what Jamie Vardy is. It is shithousery at its best, and that was one of my favorite moments this season.
Yeah, despite Leicester having a terrible, terrible season, Vardy still had his moments, those, and then scoring his 200th Leicester goal on his 500th appearance at home was really cool to see. So
Yeah,
it's good to see a Premier League legend like Vardy go out in style.
yeah, I agree completely. Unlike De Bruyne, who missed an absolute sitter
Oh my
at home.
God.
Let's
That's
see.
killer.
It was killer. Let's move on to our teams, and then we can wrap this up. We just want to do some end of the season awards specific to Arsenal and United. If you're not an Arsenal United fan, I think you should still listen. But if you're not and you don't want to listen, too bad because we're going to do it anyway. So let's start with Arsenal. I'll let you run through and kind of maybe you give your awards for everything, and I'll go and do mine.
Okay, sounds good. My player this season is Uran Timber. I spoke about him earlier, but I think he was super consistent coming off his ACL tear last year where he played 0 minutes. He played so many minutes for us, was always really strong. I was very impressed with his one-on-one defending and his ball carrying, and just super secure with the ball. I think Declan Rice is the easy pick here, but I wanted to switch it up, and I think Timber deserved his flowers and was, I think, a little more consistent throughout the season. Rice had like a few games here and there where he wasn't up to quite his quality. Not taking away from him having a great season, but I just wanted to shout out Timber because I thought he was phenomenal this season and so consistent. And he just impressed me so much. Seeing him play like for the first time actually.
Yeah.
My surprise performance this season is really easy. I'm also with Skelly coming on and just performing the way he does. He's so impressive, so mature for how young he is, and was honestly one of our best players in many big games with his ability to actually drive forward and be confident and taking the game like by the scruff of the neck when no one else would when we were struggling for a bit. So he was phenomenal. Underperforming this season is Raheem Sterling. I mean, he was just terrible. It doesn't help that I had some expectations. It was hopeful when we signed him. I thought it was going to be a good loan signing. I was like, oh, he's going to come and fire it up, have a good season, prove the doubters wrong. And boy, was I wrong. Raheem Sterling was terrible this season. Like one of the worst players I've seen play for Arsenal. It was so bad.
It's like I've been seeing this meme online where people are like, the haters said he couldn't do it, and the haters are right. He was absolutely just useless. I think was probably the best way to put it. Like, it was like, I don't know if it was offensively bad. It was just very useless, I felt like.
It was pretty offensively bad. My God, he could not be a single player. He dribbled the ball out of bounds. I remember on one podcast I talked about this, but I swear he ran offside on purpose so he didn't have to get the ball offside all the time. He was terrible. I didn't think he could be that bad. He was terrible.
Yeah. Crazy that he's going back to Chelsea and still under contract there. Interested to see what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, he wouldn't have even gotten minutes for their second team in the early stages of Europa League if he was at Chelsea. He was that bad.
Yeah.
And then my goal this season, Declan Rice's second free kick against Real Madrid. That thing was beautiful. But if I'm going to go for a Premier League goal, it is Calafiori's left-footed shot from outside the box against Manchester City. It was on his first start. We were down 1-0 to City, and he had like the technique on it. I've never seen a goal like it. He hit it with the inside of his foot from the left side of the box, curled away from the keeper into the side netting. Super unique, really impressive. Calafiori's kind of first big moment at the club was really cool to see from a new signing. So yeah.
Yeah. Nah, nice. I think those are all good, and I agree with the goal of the season. That probably would have been mine. I thought it was electric the way. First of all, that was such a huge game at the time. I know City went
Mm-hmm.
on to have a disappointing season, but at the time, that was a really, really big game, given everything that had been transpiring between Arsenal and City in their past matches. And then, yeah, the way he came on and just kind of said, "I'm going to score," and it wasn't one of those ones where it was a cross that meant that went in. Like, he definitely was trying to score, so it was really
Mm-hmm.
cool. And the technique was very unique, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I will run through mine real quick though. So this is my take on the Arsenal player or the Arsenal awards of the season from a Manchester United fan. I would say my player of the season for Arsenal is Declan Rice. I think he was, like you said, he's the obvious pick, but he was the obvious pick for a reason. He showed the most character, I think, out of anyone in the Arsenal squad when it came to just you need something to happen, he will make it happen. He ran back defensively, covered ground, but also got forward and scored some really, really important goals for you guys. And even took up some of the creative burden when Saka was out for that time period. I think he was a big reason that you guys were able to stay afloat while Saka was gone. And then surprise performer of the season, I have to choose Miles Lewis Skelly as well. I was going to try and choose someone different, but I feel like it's hard to pick anyone different from that. Coming into the season or maybe early on, I thought Ethan Nwaneri would be the guy to kind of break through and make an impact, which he did. Credit to him. But Lewis Skelly just took it to a whole different level. The way he
Mm-hmm.
was able to come in with such confidence and swagger, the way he scored against City and did the Holland celebration, I thought
Mm-hmm.
was just absolutely an electric way to introduce yourself to the world. And then to go on, get your first England call up and score in your first England call up as well. You can't really beat that. I know that didn't really happen in the league, but it still contributes just to the story and the lore that was Miles Lewis Skelly's debut season here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then underperformer of the season, uh, obvious pick is Sterling, but I would also say Odegaard. I don't
Yeah,
want to
that's a
pile
good
on
one.
him too much because he wasn't awful, but for to where he was like a couple seasons ago to see where he is now, his stock is probably way down. And I think if you're Arsenal, you're probably thinking about benching him next season or sell. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have seen any rumors about selling him. I don't. I think it's probably a little bit too early to sell him, but you're definitely looking at other options around that position that aren't Martin Odegaard going into next season because he just did not do enough to step up as the Arsenal captain this season, in my opinion.
For sure. He was super disappointed. If it wasn't for Sterling being so goddamn awful, like not even being being able to play football, Odegaard would be the pick because he was just super disappointing given how good and what his standards is and what we can him see, what we know he can do and I've seen him do. He just looked like a shell of himself. We talked about it multiple times. He looked kind of sickly. His confidence looked shot. He just was not the player that we know he can be. So it was really disappointing to see Odegaard not step up and not just have the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's got to be going on kind of mentally or physically. I know he did get injured. He hurt his ankle early-ish in the season,
Yeah,
so I'm hoping it
I
was
remember
just an
that.
injury thing and he has it fully recovered and he'll be better back to his
Mm-hmm.
best next season. But yeah, he just wasn't taking on shots. The shots he was taking, he wasn't connecting cleanly. Yeah, just disappointing from Odegaard this season. And when you needed someone to step up, you want your captain to do that, and he just did not do that multiple times throughout the year. So I'm very disappointed season from him.
So hopefully he can bounce back next season, but not what you want to see. And then goal of the season, if I had to pick one in the league, it would be the Calafiori goal that he scored against City. And then if I had to pick one outside of the league, I think it's got to be Declan Rice's second free kick against Real Madrid. I mean, can't score many goals better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my picks for Arsenal.
Nice. We can move on to United, and I will let you go first since this is your team.
Nice. So Manchester United ended the season awards. I want to start with player of the season. It can be none other than Bruno Fernandes. If you say anybody else, you're just trying to be contrarian because Bruno was single-handedly the reason that we probably did not get relegated this season. He carried the team through some of the most difficult moments. He stepped up as a captain on and off the field during some difficult moments as well. There was a time he paid for a lot of the staff to be able to go to the Europa League final because the club wouldn't. Another story that went way under the radar when it happened was Joshua Zirkzee got booed off the pitch against Newcastle. He got a first half substitution, probably 30 some minutes into the game, and went down the tunnel after getting booed off the pitch. and Bruno wasn't playing that game because he was suspended. He was actually in the crowd, and he actually saw Joshua Zirkzee go down the tunnel. He goes down and meets him in the dressing room and gave him kind of a pep talk, told him to keep his head up, and was one of the people that encouraged him to go back out onto the bench and basically face the situation. And from that moment on, Zirkzee actually kicked on and was one of our best players. So I think some of the stuff that Bruno does doesn't get enough credit, and I think he's my player of the season, not only for what he did on the field, but for being such a good leader off the field this season. And
I didn't know
then
about that story
oh,
about him.
yeah.
I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that story, like you said. Wasn't really publicized, but that's cool to hear from Bruno comforting Xerxes in that moment.
Yep. And then my surprise performer of the season or breakout player is got to be Amad Diallo. For me, it wasn't really a surprise because coming into the season, I kind of pegged him to be someone that would kind of break out just from what I'd seen from him towards the end of last season and what I saw from him during the preseason. So if I had to pick someone that was genuinely a surprise, I would say I'm between either Aiden Heaven or Casemiro. So I say Aiden Heaven because we bought him for about $1 million from Arsenal. He was an academy player. I don't think he had made his senior debut for Arsenal yet, or if he had, he played very, very minimal minutes. Had no expectations for him just because of like how little the fee was. And he came in and he looks like he might actually genuinely be a player, good enough to even potentially be a starter for us next season. So I think he was a big surprise. And then Casemiro, it was a surprise because he looked so washed under Eric Ten Hag and even the beginning of this season. But I will say the second half of the season, the way he fought back and made Emram was ready to call him basically a player that was useless. Like Emram didn't even want to use him as a substitute, let alone a starter. And then Casemiro just kept his head down, worked hard, and was able to work his way back into our starting lineups in some of the biggest games towards the end of the season. So I thought that was a surprise for me within the season. So those are my two surprise performers outside of Amad Diallo.
Nice.
And then underperformer of the season, again, I think it has to be Rasmus Højlund. If you say anybody else, you're just trying to be a little bit different. But Rasmus Højlund came in, expectations weren't even sky high, and he still just completely underperformed. I don't really know what's up with him. Like he's super low on confidence, but it looked like he lost like any shred of technical ability that he had as well. His touches are just completely off. His hold-up play wasn't good. The goals that he scored were pretty scrappy, and he just seemed like a complete shell of himself compared to what we saw in that first season. Like when I saw him play that first season under Ten Hag, I thought we had a player there. Even if he wasn't completely lining up the Premier League, he had one of the best Champions League campaigns for a young player that you could have. He was like top 3 in scoring in the group stage or something like that. And then just came in the season and just never seemed to be able to get it going. So for me, he's my underperformer. And then goal of the season, if we're talking across all competitions, it has to be Harry Maguire's goal versus Lyon to win the game in the quarterfinal of the Europa League. Just because of what that game was and like how insane that game was in the comeback. But I'd say in terms of goals within the league, I'll pick Amad Diallo versus Manchester City. The first time we played them at the Etihad, he brought the ball down and scored and rammed the keeper versus Ederson to win the game after winning the penalty that tied up the game right before that. And I thought it was just a really cool goal because it was unique in the way that he was able to bring the ball down and then round the keeper. You have to watch it. I don't really know how to like describe it to give it credit, but it was just one of my favorite goals to watch this season.
Nice. Yeah, I can't remember if that one comes to mind, but when I was thinking of goals, Ahmad was definitely up there for having some scoring some really nice goals this season.
Yeah. But that's all I had as far as United end of the season awards.
Nice. I've got a pretty similar list to you. I think there are probably a lot of similarities probably from all these awards, just because it was too much variety in United season. But Bruno's got to be the player of the season. Surprise player of the year is easily Amad Diallo, but for a kind of a backup pick, I'm going to go with Harry Maguire. I'm not the biggest United fan, so I haven't watched him too much, and I know he wasn't starting the entire season, but he's completely changed my perception on him and it's largely due to this season. Yes, he's been progressing over the past few years, but I thought he was one of your more consistent defenders and stepped up with some big goals when you guys needed it, and it just looks like pretty calm and like honestly finally settled at United. I don't know if that really like is the right take, but I was impressed by Harry Maguire. That's something I never thought I would say. So I think should be firmly in the plans for United going forward with Amarin, how he shakes up the team.
Yeah.
Underperforming this season, easily Rasmus Højlund. Couldn't score. Just like you said, looked really poor in like all aspects of his game. And then goal of the season has to be Maguire's late winner against Lyon in the Europa League quarterfinals, but also Kobbie Mainoo's before that was also really, really nice. Kind of doing his signature fake inside the box cut, far post finish. He's got that one down. Seen that one before. That was also a really nice goal from him.
Yeah, I think Kobbie's a great honorable mention there. And then going back to what you were saying about Harry Maguire, I think that's a great shout. For me, I didn't want to call it a surprise because I think he just got memeified, but I don't think he was ever as bad as people made him out to be. I think our tactics probably made him look a little bit worse at times, but he's always been a strong central defender. I think that's why he played well for England times when they kind of played. I think Southgate played like a 3 in the back at times, where Harry Maguire would play the center back, and I think he was always solid. And I think when he has that type of protection around him, I think he's good. Don't ask him to go out and defend wingers out wide in channels. If you let him sit back, play in the middle, kind of dictate play with his passing, I think he's better on the ball than people give him credit for. And then also just he's so dominant in both boxes aerially. I think he is so underrated in that aspect. And I said in one of my videos I uploaded earlier this week, I think Harry Maguire and Lenny Yora are our 2 best center backs. And I hope we hold on to Harry Maguire. Some people are talking about we should sell him due to his age and like the fact that his stock is a little bit back up. But I think he's someone that we should continue to build around at this point. And
for sure.
Yeah, I think he played well.
For sure. You need someone that's experienced in the league and just has been around for a while. So I think it'd be a huge mistake getting rid of him. I think that would just shake up the defense a little too much, and you just don't need. You already got a young center back in Lenny Yoro. There's no need in trying to get an unproven center back outside the league. Just stick with him. Don't go spending money on something that might not work out when he's showing or kind of proving that he can play that position quite well.
Yep. Can't argue with that. But yeah, that's all I really had from a United perspective. I'm trying to think if there is anything else I really wanted to shout out. Not really. I think if I had to give like a signing of the season, I think it's probably got to be Lenny Yoro for me. I think especially towards the tail end of the season, like last few weeks, he looked like our best center back and one of our best players. He is extremely good on the ball, and I think as he matures and grows into his body a little bit more, but also just gets a little bit more experience, I think he'll grow on the defensive side of the game. But as far as like passing ability and also just ball carrying, he produced a couple goals himself in our second to last in our semifinal Europa League matchup. It was. Just straight up carrying the ball from the back to the front and being able to distribute and make stuff happen. So I think he's one for the future, and I'm glad we have him on our side.
Nice. Yeah, for Arsenal, our signing this season, Calafiori didn't play too much. It can't be him. Mourinho had a bad start to the season, but when we needed him, he did come up pretty big for us, filling in, deputizing as our number 9. So I have to go with him. But we also didn't make too many signings. So it's almost like kind of as out of default, go with Mourinho.
Yeah, I think Mourinho's a great shout. Like you said, he kind of was forced to be all over, and I think he did a great job filling in at the number 9 for him not being a true number 9. Yeah. But yeah, that's all I had here.
For the end of the FPL season, had a good season overall, finished like 99K, so just inside the top 100K, which I would consider a success, so happy with that. Finished second in the mini league again this year, which is what my main goal was to win that. Connor finished above me again, so I wasn't able to chase him down, even though I was making up ground towards the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't quite have enough time, and he made some great decisions to just kind of hold on to that lead. And I differentiated a good bit towards the end, and he ended up outscoring me by like 40 points this season, or sorry, by the last week. So that kind of widened the gap, but that was mostly because I was chasing. The one disappointing thing from the very end of the season was going for Haaland when he did absolutely nothing. Thankfully, I got rid of Salah for that, and he didn't really do anything either, so kind of like didn't really matter. But was hoping that going for Haaland would have given me that big differential to catch up, but nothing happened there. KDB had one good week for me, but other than that was pretty annoying. Especially missing that one chance on the last week of the season. Not that really would have made a difference. And then triple captaining Saka on the last day was quite frustrating. Thought he was going to start. Obviously he didn't. And I was on Jared Bowen all week before I brought in Saka on triple captain. I knew I was going to make some transfers. I had two. But I felt really good about captaining Bowen. But enough people bringing in Saka, there wasn't enough talk about him getting benched. So I felt pretty good he was going to start. And I just thought he had potential for more upside for what I really needed. Yeah, overall, good season. Happy with how it went. Just need to have a better start to this season. The past 2 years, I started too low and had to make up ground, which I was able to do, but not enough to win the mini league at least.
But I will talk about, or one, I want to talk about, I can empathize with you when it comes to the Haaland frustration and hoping that that was going to end up working out better. I was right there with you, and I also triple captained Haaland the first week that he was back against, I think it was Southampton, where the Man City ended up. Did that game end up 0-0?
Yeah, 0-0 against Southampton.
That's heinous. That is awful. Like I was like, I didn't. It wasn't even so much that Haaland didn't score or assist. Like it would have been one thing if Man City like had won the game, but like Haaland just didn't end up being in and around the goals. But for them to play Southampton and for that game to end up 0-0 in a game that they also needed to win in order to help their Champions League prospects, that was extremely frustrating, especially because I watched the whole game and it was just cross after cross after cross, shot after shot. They had 27 shots or 25 shots, and I think Haaland had one of them, or I think he actually had 0 shots until like the 90th minute or like 80 something plus minutes. So that was just extremely frustrating to watch. From my season's perspective, but still going back to your team, I thought you did a really good job managing up until like the last week, and then you kind of just got to go for it, and it's like it's those 50-50 calls, whether you go for Saka or Bowen or this or that, but that's how the cookie crumbles. That's FPL, but still should hold your head up high. Like you said, you finished top 100K, which is still a very good finish.
Yeah, I just need to have a better start, which I don't know how I'm going to do that because the past 2 years just pretty bad starts. So think about that and this off season and see how I can have a better start next year. Maybe I'll just go more template and not try and change it up too much.
Yeah. I'll say, looking back at my season, I ended up finishing like 750 or 740K. I really went a little crazy towards the end of the season, just trying to make up ground. I was basically going all or nothing, trying to beat Kyle and just get as high of rank as I possibly could. I will say I'm pretty happy with the last probably third of my season, because the first 2/3 I just was stuck so badly in the mud. It just seemed like no matter what I did, I was just making the wrong decisions. But towards the end of the season, I don't know what exactly boosted me up much higher, but I just felt like I was starting making the right calls. But then the beginning of the downfall was probably triple captaining Haaland in that game week 36. And then last week of the season, I forget what my moves were. I think I just kind of banked on my team being able to do okay, and they just they didn't really shit the bed, but they could have just been better.
You did De Bruyne to Saka, which netted you 0 points.
Yeah, so it didn't really make a difference, but I thought about bringing in Bowen instead, but it just felt like, that's exactly what it was. I was between Bowen and Saka at the deadline, and we got no early news. I feel so disappointed because I was like, I know the safer pick is Bowen, but
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, go big or go home. Essentially, like if Saka plays, like I'm gonna captain him, and hopefully he can like save my season. And I love Saka, so I was like, it was more for like the feel good feeling of it all. I was like, Bowen just feels so boring. I'm like, I don't want to play this to be boring. Like, let's see what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, though, I don't think I would have had enough points to catch Kyle anyway. He had an insane last week, along with Connor Anderson. Is what it is at this point. But yeah, I agree. Going into next season, my goal will be not to fall behind so early. But I feel like I went pretty template and still fell behind, so I don't really know what the secret sauce is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess a lot of people, no one had Salah to start the season, and he had a really good start to the season. And then, yeah, I guess maybe I didn't get on Salah early enough, and I think I held on to Haaland longer than I should have early in the season.
Yeah, I had
Yeah, Kyle had a.
Salah. Oh, go ahead.
You can talk about your team.
No, I was just gonna say I had both Salah and Haaland to start the season.
Really?
And
Wow.
I actually started the season pretty well. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if there's a way to like 100% verify that, but I'm pretty sure I had them. But I can see in my season what really, really killed me. Obviously, it's still early in the season, so there's a lot of variation. But the infamous wild card one in game week
Yeah.
6,
that killed
83%
you.
red arrow is crazy. And then I kind of just went up and down and up and down and up and down from there, and like wasn't quite able to claw my way back. But we will be back next season.
You did start with Haaland and Salah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I remember that being kind of like a risky move people were talking about, but I was like, yeah, I think I can get away with it.
Nice. Yeah, it looks like you came up short on Kyle by 44 points, which he outscored you basically all. Because you were ahead of him going last week, but he had his bench boost, and that was huge for him.
Yeah, and I remember watching the games, and like every update I got about someone scoring was somebody that he had on his team. Because I think Mo Salah scored pretty late in the Liverpool match versus Crystal Palace, which was huge for him. And then Semenyo scored twice, I think. And then the Pickford clean sheet against Newcastle was really disappointing as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he had a great last week of the season.
And the reason I wanted to beat him so badly is because I forgot that I had the $50 bet with him. I couldn't remember if we did
50,
it or not.
damn.
It was a $50 bet from the beginning of the season, and I had in the back of my head that we made that, but he did not mention it from the day that we made the bet. He did not mention it once until like a week after the season was over. He was like, "So when are you gonna send me that $50?" And I was like, "Oh, so that was real."
Yeah, I was looking at your season. Yeah, it looks like Wildcard 1 hurt you, and then Game Week 10 was you really had a bad drop off.
I can't even remember what happened around Game Week 10, but I just remember there was a time period, and it was right around that Game Week 10 time period where I was like, everything that I was doing was bad. It started Game Week 4 and Game Week 5, and then Game Week 6, I was like, let me change my fortunes with this wild card. That's what I think it was. Game Week 6 was when I brought in like triple Arsenal and some other stuff, but then the Arsenal defense ended up getting. I think that was around the time Saliba got that first red card, and then they just didn't keep a clean sheet, and yeah.
In Game Week 10, you did Ahmad and Solanke for Garnacho and Cunha for -4, which ended up being a -12 because Solanke, I think, had a hat trick that day, or he had 16 points.
Of course he did.
He had two goals and assists the day you brought him out, so that's brutal.
Of course he did.
And you had Semenyo on the of course we both had Semenyo on the bench with a 10-pointer.
Yeah.
That was
Semenyo
was so frustrating all season.
He was.
And of course on the last day of the season, I bring in Evan Nilsson who does nothing, and Semenyo goes off, and Connor brings in Semenyo just to rub dirt in the wounds. The horror season it was owning Semenyo, benching him whenever he scored points, never playing him when he does or never scoring when you do start him.
Yep.
I also took out Solanke for Darwin in Game Week 10 for -14. Nice.
Brutal game weeks.
Oh well, still fun. Still love the game, and looking forward to next season.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I'm hoping, like you said, hope we can start better. But I'm looking forward to starting again already. I have some things that I know I'm going to definitely do a little bit differently.
Nice. I love listening to the FPL. We got a good post-mortem podcast where they kind of recap the season and talk about like lessons learned and everything. They're a big shout. They're convinced, at least Walsh is, Alon's pretty convinced, that bench boost game week 1 is the move.
Wow. Why is that?
Because you basically it's like a free hit wild card. You can pick any team you want for that 1 week. Like go in all in on like a game week 1 with the assumption that you're happy to play a wild card early. I'm not convinced because I think you can get a good double game week or just like a good build up a little more value later in the season. But then also that way you're not having to focus on your bench, like putting any money into your bench later in the season. But I just thought that's an interesting theory that they're really like super on board for. So I don't know if I'm going to jump on that ship. I'm going to think about that. But if nothing else, it's a fun idea and something that I think is cool that they're talking about and different.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's one thing I haven't really spent too much time looking at is like large scale meta. Like when it comes to chips and that kind of stuff, I kind of just rely on the content creators to like kind of give me an idea of when I should be looking at stuff and then making my own decisions based around kind of like what the template decisions are and not so much getting too crazy with it.
Well, there's a thought for you to consider next season.
Big or go home. That's what I actually started doing towards the end of the season, and I think it made it a lot more fun and gratifying for me was I stopped trying to play it as safe and just started kind of betting on players that I thought were more fun to watch versus others and that kind of stuff. And I think that made it a lot more enjoyable for me, even when things didn't exactly go my way.
Yeah, we'll say like having to chase for the first place was a lot of fun and probably more fun than trying to like barely hold on. There was enough gap to where you could still like kind of play however I kind of wanted. But chasing was a lot of fun, even though it didn't work out. It would have been like so gratifying if it did work out, especially like that Holland move or something. But it was a lot of fun being able to change it up and I feel like I have more freedom, just kind of go with how I want and pick against the grain. That's all I got on FPL.
Gotcha. If that's all you got on FPL, that is all we have for the pod today. If you're still listening, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. It definitely goes a long, long way. I need to start remembering to say that at the beginning of the podcast for the people that don't make it all the way to the end. But yeah, that is all we had. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening.